Okay, so let's start. Welcome, everyone. This is the OpenFGA community meeting for March 2024. I think it's been a year that almost a year we started these meetings, so it's been a lot of fun. And so we usually have this agenda in the meetings. We introduce ourselves, mention a few things we shipped in the latest 30 days. That depends on, well, anyway, so I was going to make a joke, but and then we'll do a few demos, and there's a lot of demos today, so I think it's gonna be fun. Hopefully, we have time to go through all of them and talk a little about what we're doing today and what we are working on, some community news and Q&A. And I will just go straight to the content because we have a lot of things. So this is the OpenFGA team, and you probably see some of us in the call. We are spread around the world, as you can see by the flags that everyone has. And as you may know, we have a lot of new members in the team in the last couple of months. So we are pretty happy to have them. And in general, what we do now is, in particular, if you are new to the community and it's the first time you are attending the meeting, it will be nice if you can introduce yourself in like a 10 seconds, say what you're working on, if you're working on OpenFGA or not, and what is your stage of evaluation or implementation, and anything else you want to share about yourself. So I'll kind of do an uncomfortable silence until someone wants to speak up and introduce themselves.
I can go. I'm definitely new. Sorry, I'm Frank McSherry. I'm actually, the connection I have is with Materialize, but I am the company that I'm at. But I'm especially interested in the appropriateness of declarative languages for certain types of computations, in particular deductive systems, rule-based systems, and you can sort of imagine the connection to fine-grained authorization at that point.
Awesome.
And yeah, we'll see. Hopefully there's a nice fit, but if there isn't, I'm gonna learn and feel bad and try to fix things.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Frank, for attending today.
Hi, I'm Eli Baird. I work with a company called CHG Healthcare. We're a healthcare staffing company, and we have a large distributed system application, and we're trying to figure out how to do authorization fine-grained in a distributed system. Do it effectively. We've shipped roles and packages and libraries and done weird cloning of first-party attributes all over the place. I'm trying to figure out how to unmess us. So this is where the investigation has started.
Welcome to the party. Everyone is doing the same, trying to untangle the same kind of problem. So yeah.
I could go next. So I'm Paulo. I'm based in Germany right now. Interested in FGA because I worked in fintech, and we have been introducing over time more and more elaborate products that require more sophisticated authorization model. That's why we grown this interest in OpenFGA, and we have FGA running in production right now for a small portion of the product. So yeah, we are looking to expand the use and keep the adoption going on across the company. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Paulo. Okay, anyone else wants to introduce themselves? If not, we can move forward.
I think I'm the last one. Hi, everyone. My name is Rafael. I'm from Brazil, and I'm a friend of Paulo. He invited me to watch this presentation, and I'm working now as a SRE in a CRM company, and I think is this.
That's good. Are you in Brazil now?
Yes, Londrina, south
nice.
of Brazil.
I'm in Uruguay, so we're pretty close. Okay, good. And someone else wants to say hi? Okay, so let's go to what I want to share today. So this is a few things we shipped in the last few weeks, and we shipped a new version of OpenFGA. It has the 1.5 because we introduced a minor incompatibility if you're implementing your own custom database adapter. So FGA ships with a Postgres and a MySQL adapter. We know people are building their own DynamoDB or SQLite adapters. They might need to change something if they want to integrate with OpenFGA with a new version. And we have a package and a repository called languages, which is the one we use to parse our DSL and then expose that object model of the language to different languages. So you can use like today Golang and JavaScript, and Jan, thank you Jan, he's there in the call, built a Java one. So we will be able to use, for example, easily create now an integration with JetBrains, for example, to let you edit the models based on those bindings that Jan developed. So thank you very much. We are going to demo today a new version of the CLI that has modular model support. This is a feature we'll be talking a lot, but we'll see it in action today. A few small improvements in the CLI. Also have someone contributing some changes there. Thank you, Edwin. And we shipped a new version of the Java SDK because we found a bug that we didn't like a lot. And thank you, Paulo, for reporting it. And that version is already out. And shipped a new version of the JavaScript SDK with performance improvements, and a new version of the Visual Studio Code extension with bug fixes. So a lot of small things. And then the most important work we are going to be showing today is modular models. And so let's start there. So let's start with the models demo. And I think, Ewan, you're going to start with that one?
Yeah, I'm going to start just to discuss it briefly, show the CLI, and then I'm going to hand over to Daniel.
Perfect.
So for those that have maybe kind of missed the RFC or are new, kind of the Wi-Fi modular models, we've seen that like a single file model can grow large and difficult to understand as it grows over time. There's no easy way, for example, to ensure that correct teams review specific portions. You know, if you have a 100-line file, how you have to kind of know, oh, these lines, this team owns it. Intentions to allow teams to more easily own authorization logic for their domain. And it's kind of a starting point of FGA on FGA, which is kind of the concept of authorization for writes and queries and checks. So only certain applications could potentially write certain tuples. So that's the why. Now talk about the how. So we're focusing on a tooling-based solution, so kind of done by the CLI and VS Code, rather than putting it into the OpenFGA server itself. We're introducing a manifest file, the fga.mod file. This is going to set kind of model settings such as your schema version, because you can't have a different schema version across your module, and your contents, which is going to be basically just kind of saying, these are my files that make up my model. We've got some new DSL syntax. So the module keyword, that's going to be where you declare in each DSL file what module it belongs to. And then the extend keyword, this was actually an addition, I think, based on some feedback from Jan, I believe, around allowing individual modules to declare new relations on existing types. So for example, you can see here on the organization type, Confluence is declaring can create page. It's not useful enough to be at the top level, or generic enough, I guess, to be at the top level, because Jira doesn't need to know about whether I can create a page, but Confluence does. So I'll jump now into my VS Code. Daniel will show a much nicer one later with syntax highlighting and stuff, but we're looking at this as it can be combined with features like GitHub code owners. So you can say everything under my Jira folder, I want this team to review. I think GitLab offers a similar feature. So we're kind of trying to improve the authoring experience with modular models. You can see here I declared my contents. My core FGA model is the kind of maybe owned by a core team that operates identity within my company. I've split my tickets and, whoops, I shouldn't be there, my projects. They're Jira, it's a single module split across multiple files. I can These could be separate modules if I wanted them to. You can see here I'm using the extends type keyword. And then here's my single Confluence file. So with the CLI, what this is going to do is it's going to read my fga.mod file, gather everything together, and then kind of combine into a single model. So you can see here my can create page, can create project being combined into the organization type. If I were to deploy this model into my OpenFGA server, it would have the JSON, and kind of these would be individually scoped within the modules. So I am going to stop sharing now if I can find the button. I'm going to hand over to Daniel, who is going to show off VS Code.
Muted.
Hey, you're muted, Daniel.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. So this is still very much in the state of development, looking to get it wrapped up soon, but you'll notice here there's some spurious errors that are non-impactful to the current workflow, but just to call them out. But what we'll see here is you've got your core syntax highlighting across both the manifest file and the individual modules. Just some basic validation. If you declare a file that doesn't exist, you're going to get your nice squigglies telling you that it's not an FGA file. If you were to reference another one, yep, it's going to tell you doesn't exist. So at least can help you track down when you've included modules under in an incorrect path or modules that don't exist. And more interesting is mapping errors. So if I was to say break the syntax of my core FGA model, you'll find that it not only highlights within the module itself, but it also will give you a nice little error in your manifest file, letting you know that you need to fix the syntax error. And this works across, like, if you've broken multiple things. If I just go through here and just break everything a little bit, you're going to get your diagnostics posted to the manifest file, as well as the errors being called out in your modules. So that's about where we are in the VS Code development. We need to just map errors to the correct places and clean up some of the code a bit, and I think we'll be ready to go very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. I don't know if anyone has any question or comments about what we just demoed. Go ahead. Okay, great. So, and I'm not gonna go back to the slides to announce the next demo. So the next demo is gonna be about our Java Spring integration, and so Jim is gonna help us with that one.
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Jim, and I'm gonna show some code of what we're working on to make our Spring developers' lives a little easier. So let me share my IDE. This is going to be code heavy. I didn't make slides, so I hope you all enjoy that. Just a real quick, kind of context and background is that we obviously want to provide integration for Spring, most popular, biggest framework for JVM, and also so does Spring Security, the actual platform. They have an issue to support OpenFGA. And I'll post that in the chat shortly after. And we were fortunate enough to be able to have some collaboration with Rob Lynch from Spring Security and some other folks in the community. Shout out there. And came to the conclusion that at this time, it doesn't really make sense to go right into Spring Security. There may be something later, but for now, we're going to provide our own starter. FGA is going to provide a starter. So I'm going to show that. So this is in development. So this is just using locally, but obviously we'll have a starter packaged. You simply add it to your dependency. And typical of Spring starters, it's config. So we are providing config that, if you notice, is going to mirror how you would configure the Java SDK. And that's important. For this demo, I'm just showing a local, API or no auth, but the configuration, of course, will support all the authentication config that our SDK supports. So what that does is creates a couple of beans that we can use in our application. One is the actual FGA API client that we ship as part of the Java SDK. That will be configured based upon your application's configuration, and then can be injected into any Spring component to do anything you want, really, with the SDK, and thus interact with the API. Typical, like, for example, writing authorization data or whatever then you need. It also creates a bean where we can execute some check requests. And this is where the kind of coolness comes in, is that we can build on top of or leverage Spring Security's method security. For those that are familiar, real quick, basically pre-authorize says anything in this expression returns false. 403 will be returned. The necessary events for authorization denied are triggered. The method never executes. So that's a very common Spring Security pattern. And as you can see, you can probably figure out what this is doing. We're basically saying this user, Anne, I'll talk about that in a second, needs to have the can read relation on the document with that ID. This is, you can use Spring expression language in here. So you obviously wouldn't typically hard code our usernames. So we can do things like that, or really anything you want as far as that's supported by spell. You can also omit the user ID, and we will just by default use the currently authenticated principal's name as the user ID. So if we look here, I have a very simple model that just defines a few relations, and I've got a tuple that Anne is a viewer relation of document 1. And so if I try to do that, we get the doc. If we try to get a document for which it doesn't have the requested relationship, we get a denied 403, as we would expect. So, and that's the nuts and bolts of what we have. And I should just point out, so next steps, we are going to release an initial version in April of this year. And that will have support for the FGA client, like we said, support for a basic check. And then we will obviously get feedback, and there's some other work we'll want to do post that initial release. I do also, just real quick, want to talk about a little bit looking forward. So one of the things that Rob from Spring Security helped us understand is that there's some features coming in the new version of Spring in May that's going to make things even better for us and for consumers. And that is to be able to use these things called meta annotations to basically create our own annotation that can have some improved DX. And even cooler is that can further be extended by customers for their specific use case to do something like, well, we've got these checks on documents, they're always typed document. The user type's always the same. So they can continually extend it so that it becomes, really, simple and readable to execute these checks. Again, that's not going to be supported until later by Spring in general, and of course, us after that. So with that, that's what I have. I guess if we have time for any comments or questions, I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Next in line is Paulo. He's going to show us some cool things he did with OpenFGA.
Cool. Let me see how I share one specific window. Oh my gosh, I don't use. I think it's this one. Let me see. Amazing. I need to reconnect, I guess, because it's the first time I share anything with Zoom, so it will be back in 30 seconds. Sorry for this.
Sounds good. We can change the order of the demos if you want.
Yeah,
right.
it's
So
totally fine. Yeah.
really
Yeah, go ahead.
sounds good. Perfect. So John, do you want to do yours?
Yeah. Hey everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So what I'm going to be showing you today is a roadmap item that we have on the roadmap for this year. And it's just the very early beginnings of this larger body of work. It's going to be a really hard body of work, but we're looking forward to it. In our documentation, we refer to this problem as a search with permissions problem. The scenario is, right, you might have a bunch of data on your application side of things, and you want to apply a filter to it. Maybe, you're searching for all of the documents that start with the name, foo. And all of the documents that get returned back should respect the filter, in addition to respecting the access controls, the access filter that apply to all of those resources as well. If you have a lot of resources that you're filtering and you have a lot of access policies going on, then doing that efficiently can be really hard. So we want to help the community solve that problem by bringing more intuitive and efficient ways to filter data with access controls in mind. We call that problem search with permissions problem. So one way that we're thinking about approaching this is to expose ways for clients of OpenFGA to build indexes on the relationships that exist in OpenFGA. This is very, very early, very preliminary. Nothing I say here is, binding by any means, but it's just to kind of demonstrate the idea. We may add, certain annotations to our modeling language, such as, @index clause. And this indicates that I want to index the member relation on the group type specifically for user subject types or user types. So, in this case, what's unique about this example, although it's a very simple example, it's also a very powerful example, because group members can be directly related to users, but group members can also be related to other groups. So you can have nested groups, and that nesting creates indirection, which causes, a challenge for indexing, right? If you want to know all of the groups that you are a member of, you have to follow every nested subgroup. And if that list is large, that's a hard problem to solve. So it's a good example, even though it's very simple. Our thinking is that we can take this index clause, this definition, and we can decompose this into materialized views that represent all of the recursive and nested cases where a given user has a membership to some group. So what we're thinking is that in the near future, I tried to do this for the demo, but I ran into a lot of roadblocks. So maybe in our next meeting, but we could introduce a CLI command called, like FGA index create. And this command takes, the name of the index you want to create, the target user that you want to create the index for, the target user type. So that could be, like a user or some other type or entity, the relation that you want to index, and the object type for that relation that you want to index. The output of this command could produce a series of materialized views that represent the, you know, effective index, which is analogous to basically following all of these relationships in this graph of relationships. If you think about OpenFGA as a graph of relationships, what we're doing is we're effectively flattening that graph for you, and we're providing a materialized view of that flattened graph for you. So when we produce a materialization or a materialized view for this definition here, we can break it down and decompose it into its individual parts. So we can find all of the relationships where a user is directly related to a group through a membership relation. And then we can also apply a recursive CTE, SQL definition, to follow all of the nested groups for group members. So that's what we see here. We see a materialized view. This group to group materialized view is a recursive CTE that follows all of those nested groups and produces a flattened, a flattened table, if you will, of all of the nested groups. And then our composite materialized view, I call it composite because it stitches together our recursive materialized view with just the base case, which is where users here on the right-hand side, users are directly related to group members. So you could imagine if we could programmatically produce these materialized view statements, then we could actually deliver that to, you know, the OpenFGA community, and you can use that on your end to create indexes of the tuple change data that is coming off of our read changes endpoint. That's kind of the high level idea. The technology that we're kind of building this upon right now is Materialize. So I noticed Frank's here. Thanks for attending. Materialize, it provides us a way to get real-time streaming changes of our materialized views. We don't have to manually refresh our materialized views. Materialize auto refreshes those materialized views for us. And it efficiently computes the differences in those materialized views as they're changing. So let's go ahead and, well, before I jump into the demo, any questions? We'll pause for a sec.
So where would the materialized view actually live? Like in the OpenFGA data store or in our backend?
Yeah, so there's two lines of thinking. At first, we would encourage it to live on your end of things because you're applying it, right? It's going to live right alongside your data because you're going to be applying the filters against it in whatever, data store, SQL-based data store or whatever. The other idea that we've had too, though, is that you could store this index, we could manage the index, right? On the server side. If we're talking about like a SaaS offering of OpenFGA, like OctaFGA, we could store that index and we could stream the change to you. Obviously a little less efficient, but that's another idea there as well. We would probably encourage, right, moving the data as close to the client as possible. So we would like to encourage the first one more so than the second, but those are some general ideas.
So we would read changes, write those to our database, and then run this materialized view process within our database to get the lookup table, essentially.
Yep. Or we would provide, yes, or in a little more efficient way is we could provide a source connector, for example, from Materialize. If we go here, there are sources. We could provide like some kind of source connector that is an integration on top of the read changes endpoint or something like that. But that's very high level. Yeah, you're reading data off of our read changes somehow and then producing materialized views off of it. Great question. Okay, so now I'm just going to be doing this through the database directly, but just imagine that all these inserts are just writes from the OpenFGA server. I didn't have time to wire that up. So we're going to write a tuple here. We're going to give user John, we're going to make user John a member of the FGA backend group. And then we're going to write some nested groups. So the FGA backend, any member of the FGA backend group is also a member of the FGA group. Okay. Now down here, we actually have our index. So this index is the output of this command, FGA index create. It's the composite materialize view here, the group member user index. So if we select off of that materialize view, we actually see two entries. We see that user John is a member of the FGA backend and a member of FGA. So we've followed the nested groups. We've expanded or flattened those nested groups, and we're providing you a flattened form of that. If we add one more, just to add another level, right, we can say that anyone who's a member of the FGA group is also a member of the engineering group. So we'll go ahead and write that tuple and select, and now you see the engineering group too. So we've just flattened two nested levels into a single flattened table. And now you could take this table and you could efficiently join it with your data and have a super efficient search with permissions index. So there's a lot of work to be done here. This is very rudimentary right now. It's you know, high level conceptual, but what we're working on right now is producing the materialized views given the index definition that you want. And once we have that mechanic, then we can really bring this to the community in a larger way.
As a comment, right? What John did is he wrote those materialized views definitions manually by himself, right? So he understood the model and wrote those queries, right? That's something that you can do today. It's just, it might be hard to write those queries if they get, you have a complex model, right? And that's why we want to automatically generate those views for use. However, this is kind of, what we're doing is we're taking advantage of Materialize, the product, right? And you can take advantage of the product today if you want to solve this problem, if you write the views yourself, right? And we are gonna help you so that takes less time, right? But this is more like an integration with Materialize, like a feature that FGA is gonna serve for you, right? So the feature we're gonna generate those views, and then you can apply them. There's also additional work to do in the is kind of what we showed is we have a specific model, right? And now we generate the views for that. But then your model can change, right? And when your model changes, it can happen that you need to adjust those views based on the changes in relationships, right? And so that's another challenge that we need to figure out how to solve, which is, okay, how do we have a way to regenerate just the views that are impacted by your model change, right? And not to have to rebuild all those materialized indexes and just the ones that really need to be recreated, right? So that will be another path we can follow to, besides the initial creation, what happens with that index once the model starts to evolve.
And that's just maybe one comment. We are exploring the similar ideas here, but the idea that we had was, instead of creating the SQL functions or views, we would actually store the data in a flat way and generate the query that would query the data, right? So if you change the model, you just regenerate the query instead of regenerating the functions or views, right? So this is something we are also going to explore. So let's see how it goes, but it really looks promising, really good.
Perfect. Thank you, Paulo. Perfect.
I think
Any
that's
other
what we're
comment or
finding is
question?
the challenge of
Yeah,
the work is in producing, the query, the statements, if you will, the statements, given any arbitrary FGA model, producing the statements. If we can figure out that problem, then there's a lot we can do with that, whether it's materializations of those statements, whether it's, the statements themselves, there's a lot of power that we can leverage there.
Great. Perfect. So now we can go to your demo, Paulo, if you want.
Yeah, let's see. Now it should work. Okay. You can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Cool. So I'm going to talk about a command line or terminal UI thing. So of course, my slides will be also on the terminal. I hope you can see there. I'm going to talk about this FGA manager. That's a little tool that was created to help seeing what's inside FGA, right? So the repo address is down below. You can access, take a look, use, give feedback, everything welcome. In my blog, if you want to take a look as well. So let's see what is this. Just giving some background about me. First, I'm Paulo. I'm coding for the last 20 years, and that's my biggest achievement, right? Being on the same thing for 20 years is a huge achievement. I live in Berlin for the last 6 years. I love programming languages. If you see my blog, you'll see that I got involved in so many languages for the last 14 years. I worked in many different companies, and now I worked as an engineer lead at Moss. And I'm having this privilege to help adopting FGA here at Moss. Just a quick disclaimer, this is all my views and opinions. I'm not representing Moss officially, but talking about Moss is this Berlin fintech. It's an all-in-one spend management for small to medium businesses. And we offer, invoice management, reimbursement, credit cards, so people can spend with responsibility, let's say, and control, right? And like I mentioned in the very beginning, right, over time, the product is demanding new ways of having authorization. So before it was very simple, and now we have these products that touch many different things. And then FGA came as a savior here for us. And we are now running in production, right? But a couple weeks ago, when we are getting data from the existing systems and dumping into FGA, right? Because we need to, of course, get the data that we are calling snapshot. We wanted to see what's going on, right? Many times the data, we don't store the tuples in the origin systems, but we derive them. So they become the tuples that go to FGA, right? And we wanted to take a look. Of course, we have tests, we have logs, but we, want to real quick see what's going on. And we have the playground, very beautiful, very useful. But if you have a lot of tuples, I think we have like 1.3 million tuples in staging only, and you cannot see everything. You cannot query and search for things, basically, right? CLI, very good, but for different use case. We use it, but not for trying to see what's going on. We also had a constraint, no front end to help us. And then I said, you know what? I will put some time and I'll try to build something and use Go, right? There's a really nice library called TView. It's a really nice library. And I put together this thing that I will show to you. Before we see this thing, just talking about architecture, because it's so small, but still there's some architecture going on. It's basically a Go application with a couple Go routines, and it's a CQRS-ish architecture, right? So we never change anything locally. We just go to FGA to apply any deletes or writes, and then we just listen for changes and apply locally, right? And this is just a diagram just to illustrate some fake services talking to FGA as you keep using it, and things are written to your local database. So on the pro side of things, you never hit FGA to do random crazy queries that you want to check for that invoice if it's there. And then you keep FGA as this closed box thing, right? I don't want to stimulate this idea of let's go to FGA database and see what's inside. Let's rely on the contracts only, and the contracts is the API. So we keep this thing abstracted. And of course, it's high performant because it used, there is something called virtual table inside this library that makes it's really interesting to have millions of lines to be displayed really quickly. And you have a bunch of filters that I'm going to show. Of course, on the flip side, because you are syncing data locally, if you have 1.3 million tuples, when you spin this thing up for the first time, it will take long to get to the latest recent change, right? But it's another problem for the future. Let me show you the tool, and just as a reference, the model that I'm using here is the one that you run FGA locally, you open the playground, create a new store, and there is this sample model, right? I just saved, and I'm just using it. I created a separate application that keeps writing and deleting things, so we see some movement. Things are not very static. So let's take a look at this thing. Let me just run. It's just a command line application, right? You give your store ID, your API endpoint, and it should show something. And this is how it looks. It looks like a lot of things going on, but only 3 separate pieces here. The big table here is just showing all the tuples that were synced from this local FGA running on my machine. See the user types, the IDs, etc. And then we have the couple filters, right? That we have some beautiful drop downs based on the relations and user types, etc. Or you can just issue your SQL-like query, right? Like very very harsh, very straight to the point. And on top, we see that we are watching this server. This is the store ID continuation token just for information. And every time it polls, it will show you how many writes happened and how many deletes are happening, right? So basically, usage is very simple, right? I want to see only user type folder, and I hit here, and I can just see immediately what's going on. It also supports the Vim key bindings, right? So if you are in your table and you hit Shift G, just go down to the last line, or GG, you go to the top, and you'll see that we have 10,000 entries. Things are pretty fast. And you can also create tuples, right? Let's say you are doing some examples to demo something, and you can just create, I think we have folder, right? Zoo is a parent of doc, I don't know, let's see. Turtle. You can just create things, and because there are things going on, you will not see here, but we can maybe filter with a zoo, and then we see the tuple that I just inserted, right? And you can also delete the tuple, right? Just hit Ctrl D, and it will get red for a moment until it gets refreshed. I will refresh manually, and the tuples, they should go away, right? So yeah, this is pretty much it. It helped a lot to see the data immediately, that was really, really useful thing. There are a couple ideas that I will talk about in a second, but in general, this is the tool, right? Very small, and should feel like using K9s when you are using Kubernetes, for example. So that's pretty much it. Let me get back to the slides so I can complete the idea. So like I said, right, this is pretty much a work in progress. So I basically push to main branch. There is just minimal tests, GitHub Actions doing just simple builds, no release or anything like this. So I'm not sure where I'm going to take it. And maybe it's useful for someone else, like it was for us. There's this discussion, where should I put the data? It's some central database, but if you have a central database, you need a process to read data and dump there, like Materialize, or something that you build, right, by hand. But regardless, I have some plans for it. I want to create tuples not using these string notation, but rather the YAML. So it feels more like the YAML for tests, where you can dump several tuples with context, right? It's more useful. I also want to integrate with the model, so you can visually see the tuples that are there that are not compatible with the model anymore. So if you delete a relation, you can quickly see that there is a tuple there not matching the model anymore. Yeah, error displaying, because there is a log file that I keep here open to see what's going on. So I want to have a better way of displaying errors, like here, right? I know, sorry, my slides. And I also want to introduce the check and list endpoint, so it's even more useful if you want to do something more elaborate. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyone interested that want to turn this into something more interesting and powerful, just share your comments, your pull requests, discussion. Happy to discuss with you folks. Thanks a lot.
That's awesome. Thanks so much
Yeah,
for sharing.
Pretty cool, Paulo.
Nice.
Okay, good. So we are running out of time, and we are gonna go quickly over the rest of the content just to go through it. So first, we are working on and we are actively working, like in the middle implementation of the list users API. We have an RFC for it. We love feedback. Okay, so if you want to go to the RFC channel and look for the RFC for list users, take a look. You can see if it works for you, and if there's any use case that you want to use it and doesn't support, let us know. This is what we're working on. So you've seen demos of a couple of those, and then we're working on list users. We're going to keep working on the things on the left. The first one is keep working on authorization features. Now that we have modular models, we can build that feature we wanted for a long time, which is different permissions for different applications depending on the module. So we're going to help customers implement that use case, and then more tooling help, and those are kind of the main focus right now. Things that are happening in the community. So there's a project called Test Containers that build simple ways to embed Docker containers in your applications for testing. So when you're running an integration test, you can launch a container and target that container as part of integration tests. They built an integration with our Java and our Golang SDKs. So if you're running integration tests that depend on OpenFGA, it's a good way to use that. They have more languages. They are going to, hopefully they keep integrating with more platforms. Right now they have Java and Go. So something we mentioned this the last time, we're transitioning out from Discord to the CNCF Slack. So please join the CNCF Slack, because Discord, we're gonna stop using it for community support. And we're gonna be in KubeCon Europe. That's Pauline, that's there, and I will be presenting on OpenFGA. John is also going to be presenting on how to integrate it with Keycloak and Kubernetes, a pretty cool demo. I will have a 6-minute lightning talk also on Tuesday that I still need to prepare. So it's gonna be pretty fun. And there also Canonical Operator Day. If you're using the Canonical stack for anything, Canonical provides a very good way to manage and deploy OpenFGA. We're gonna be presenting that on Tuesday in that same week. And then I know Pauline and Geoffrey got a talk accepted in DevOps France, and I think it's next month. So congrats, Pauline, and hopefully you can keep helping the world know about OpenFGA. So thank you very much for that. And that's it. We don't have a lot of time for Q&A this time. I think we had spent a lot of time in demos, and it was pretty fun. So if you have any question or comment, you have 2 minutes, and if not, we can continue offline. So we can do it in the CNCF Slack or on GitHub. Okay, so thank you very much. Thanks, Paulo, for your presentation too. And we'll see each other in a month.
Of course. Thanks, folks. Bye.
Bye-bye.